when I was about 9 years old, my mom got remarried, and my stepdad and my mother decided to go and buy a new house. And they got this really good deal on this fixer-upper farmhouse that was right on the edge of a small town in Pennsylvania. And it was like a lot of land. There was a huge garage that was being rented out and had a bunch of vintage cars in it, which was really cool. And the house was like a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, just really nice, large farmhouse that just kind of needed some work. There wasn't a whole lot initially that seemed weird about it. You know, I was just excited to finally have my own room because I had been sharing a room with my baby brother up until then. But when you entered the house, you came in through the kitchen, and then to your right you had the living room, and there was this very old-looking, like, solid wood door that led to the basement. And, like, just from the first day, I had this weird inkling of, like, yeah, I'm not going down there. My mother decided that the best place to put me was the one bedroom that was on the first floor that happened to be right on the same wall as the basement door. I tried not to let it bother me. I just kind of tried to get used to the whole living situation. We had this really nice maple tree outside that had a tire swing, and it was a really nice place. And then things started kind of getting weird after about the first week of being there. I personally hadn't gone into the basement. Only my stepfather had gone into the basement to use it for storage. And there was one point where he needed help getting some stuff down there. My mom had back problems, so it kind of landed on me to help with that kind of stuff. So I was bringing some boxes down into the basement with him. And the first thing that hit me when I went down there was just this really weird, like, sour smell that came from the basement. And I guess I figured, oh, that's probably normal because you're underground and maybe it's just smell of mold or something. But it was just like really overwhelming, and it made it very hard to kind of even focus on what else was going on down there. So as I was putting boxes down, my stepdad pointed out that there was a door in the back of the basement. It was just like a solid white painted door, and there was a lock on it. So we had no idea what was in there. He was like, I think that is the door to the stairs that go out to the yard, which made sense. So he, being a handyman, took one of his hammers and decided to go over, and he broke the lock off of the door. Well, when you opened the door, it was actually like this strange kind of like a coat closet sized room with just a solid rock wall with a large hole in it, like just the size for like a kid to be able to crawl into. And you couldn't see, it was just pitch black, and you couldn't see into it. It kind of like went in a little bit and then like dipped down. I was like, what is that? Why is there just like a hole in the side of the house? And my stepdad, being the joker that he was like, oh, you know, why don't you go in and see what's in there? Absolutely not. Absolutely not going in there. So that was enough for me. I was like, I'm getting out of here. I'm not messing with this one. Like, the moment that we found that hole, things just started getting really, really weird in the house. So it started with noises. I would hear footsteps going up and down the stairs at night. But most of the time it was happening when, like, I was the only one in the house, or really late at night, and the bathroom was upstairs, so there was really no reason for anybody that was upstairs to have to be going on the stairs. Then there were situations where the basement door would open by itself, and this happened all the time. My stepdad kept saying, oh, it's a breeze, oh, it's a breeze, and my mind was like, how could there be a breeze in a basement with no windows? You would be sitting on the couch watching TV, knowing that that door is latched, and it would just slowly creak open while you're sitting there. And, you know, I hadn't been a kid that was, like, scared of much. Like, I didn't really mind horror or anything, but for some reason, that door, it was like, something is wrong here. And my parents would make fun of me a lot for it. They were like, oh, it's just an old house, you know, this happens. And I'm like, we've lived in a lot of old houses, and this has never happened before. I mentioned earlier there was a garage that was on our property that had a bunch of vintage cars in it. Well, that person was still renting the garage from us for his vintage cars, and we never went in there. It was all locked up. We really didn't have access to it. One night, we noticed that the lights had turned on in the garage, and the guy had not told us he was coming by. There was no cars in the driveway to show that there was anybody there. And I was looking up at the windows because it was a garage that had a second floor that had kind of like an office space in it. And I swear I saw somebody. I just saw a shadow of someone walk by one of the windows. And I was like, Tom, who's my stepdad, was like, I think somebody broke into the car garage. Like, there's someone in there. So my stepdad decides to go and take a look. The door is unlocked. So we figured maybe the guy had come by and forgot to lock it, and maybe someone got in. We weren't really sure. So he goes in to take a look around, and it's quiet for a few minutes. And next thing you know, my stepdad comes running out and he goes, call the cops, there's someone in there. So my mom's frantic, she's calling the police. You know, we're watching the garage, trying to make sure that whoever this person is that was in there doesn't get out. He described her as a woman. She was laughing and just apparently hiding behind one of the cars, and he was too afraid to go up and approach her because we were pretty sure whoever this woman was probably not in her right mind. The police show up. We had been watching that door like a hawk to make sure that whoever this was didn't get out. The police show up, they go in, they do their search, guns out, and they come out and they're like, is this a joke? And we're like, what do you mean? My mom's like, there's someone in there. Like, the lights were on, the door was unlocked, like, my husband saw someone in there. He's like, there's no one in there. We didn't see, there was no signs of a break-in, there's nobody here. So we're all like, okay, so are we all just crazy? So the cops just kind of like blew us off at that point, and they were like, don't call unless you got some evidence that somebody's been breaking in, because, you know, you guys are out of the way. This isn't funny. And we kind of tried to just let it go. No one came in or out of that property in the time between my stepdad going in and the police getting there. And, like, to this day, I don't know what that was about. I decided to explore the property at one point, and at this particular time, my mother had just bought me a new bunny that we had like this really nice setup for in the backyard. And while I was exploring the property, I found, like, way in the back, a pet cemetery. It was just this little walkway when you went into the woods a little bit, and it came out, and there was probably about 12 or 13 little, like, tombstones, and they had names of pets like Sparkles and Fuzzy. And I told my mom, and she didn't believe me, and she just refused outwardly to even, like, give me the time of day to come and look. There's just a pet cemetery on our property. Cool. And we would often see, like, pets that would be along the tree line, which was, like, where the pet cemetery was. And whenever I would, like, try to approach them, you know, they would run and there would be no sight of them again. I genuinely believe that some of those pets didn't make it off the property after they passed away. There was this one night that my stepdad was mowing the lawn, and he actually almost ran over a little nest of bunnies. Thankfully, he saw them before he did, so we ended up bringing these, like, 10 little bunnies over and putting them in the hutch with my other bunny. And everything was fine, you know, we were feeding them and stuff because we were trying to see if we could find the mom, and the mom never came back. But there was one day where all of a sudden, they all just got sick, like, at the same time, all of them. And my stepdad was like, oh, you know, it was probably the wild bunnies gave everybody something. But then, like, the next day, they would suddenly seem fine, and then sick, and then fine, and then sick, and then fine. And it was just really odd because we would take them to the vet and they were like, we can't find anything wrong with them. Like, and then one day we woke up and they were all of them were dead. When we bought my initial bunny, like, perfectly healthy, you know, we got him all of his vaccination. Like, there was nothing that indicated there was anything wrong with him or the baby bunnies. So I was like, well, we got a pet cemetery back there. And finally, my mom follows me back to the pet cemetery. We decided to bury the bunnies there. And again, it was like that thing of, after that, I swear I was seeing my bunny, because my bunny was like a snow white lop-eared rabbit. And I would see this snow white lop-eared rabbit on the tree line. I'm like, dude, that's my rabbit. Like, what is going on? After that whole thing, my parents decided to get a dog because they were still like freaked out about the whole thing that happened with the garage. And they were like, we need something to kind of like just alert us if anybody's on the property. So we ended up with our Labrador, Daisy. And trust me, she let you know when something was there. Like, she barked at everything. One night, my parents decided to go on a date night, and they left me at home with my baby brother and my cousin to babysit us. We were just sitting in the living room, watching TV. Everything kind of seemed fine. And then, of course, the basement door opens. And at this point, I had been having these dreams where I was going into the basement and crawling into that hole and finding myself in this pit with other kids that I couldn't see their faces, and there was no way out. And it was really kind of making things hard for me because like I wasn't sleeping well. And again, parents didn't believe me. They were like, oh, you're just scaring yourself. So when the door opened, I got freaked out immediately, and I was like, I want to go. And my cousin was like, we can't go. Like, we need to stay here. Your parents aren't here. All of a sudden, she goes to close the door, and we hear a loud bang on the front door. The dog starts going crazy. So my cousin's like, who's here? She's like, how would I know? Like, I'm 9 years old. I'm just hanging out. I don't know who's here. So she goes over, looks at the door. There's no one there. She comes back. She's like, okay, it's probably the wind. A few minutes later, bang, bang, bang. And this time my cousin doesn't get up because she assumes that it's something hitting the door. But then we hear this low, guttural, like, ugh. And all three of us get up. My cousin rushed us into the bedroom, closed the door and locked it, and me and my little brother went and hid underneath my bed. I remember I had like one of those little Betty Spaghetti dolls when those were a thing, and I was just clutching it for dear life. And my cousin gets down and she shuffles underneath the bed with us, and we're all facing the door under the bed, just watching. We suddenly just hear crash, and the dog is barking, and suddenly the dog stops barking. And we hear steps in the house, and it's literally just like boots on the wood, like heavy boots. And we're all silent, like I was holding my breath, and we see this shadow come out from underneath the door of a person. And it's like, that's it, we're dead. Someone has broken into the house. We are going to die. Well, my cousin decides to be the brave one. She gets up, grabs a wiffle bat that I have in the room, and swings the door open, ready to attack, and there's no one there. So she's looking around. She checked upstairs. She's like, okay, there's no one here. You guys can come out. We walked out and found that every single door in the house, including the front door, were all swung open. The dog was outside in the yard, so somehow the dog had gotten out. The basement door was swung open, and you just hear this like, coming from the basement. And I'm in tears at this point because there was definitely someone in our house. But again, there was no signs. The lock wasn't broken on the front door. There was no signs of any type of break-in whatsoever. You know, we heard these heavy boots on the floor. You would assume there was like some mud or something because it had been raining, but there's nothing. So my cousin goes out to get the dog, and the dog was just refusing to come inside. She was whining and pulling back and just did not want to come in the house. And again, we told my parents, like, this happened, and they didn't believe me until my cousin was like, no, this really happened. Like, I don't know if somebody was trying to get in here or not, but like this place isn't safe. So shortly after that, my parents decided that we were going to move. So I don't know if they started seeing things or, you know, the constant stuff coming from us made them decide to leave, but I was more than relieved to get out of that house. And to be honest with you, since I lived in that house, I've had other situations where I've felt like there was a presence following me. And I don't know if it was following me or my mother, because once my mother just passed away about a year ago, and since she passed away, I haven't had any type of situations anymore. So I don't know if something followed her into that house or followed us out, but I genuinely think that there was something evil in that house, and it stuck to us for a while. During some parts of like living there, my mom was kind of showing weird signs of like not being herself. Like in particular, I just remembered there was this time where I wanted her to play hide and seek with me, and she had been acting a little weird that day, and she was like, yeah, we'll play. So she told me to hide, and me being the stupid child that I was, decided to hide in the dryer. But I left the door slightly cracked so that I could, get out and breathe. And I remember being all excited because I saw my mom coming, and I was planning to try to scare her. And she walks over and slams the dryer shut and proceeded to either, I don't know if it was her standing in front of it or she blocked it, but I could not get the dryer door open. And like 5 minutes later, as I'm crying, screaming for help, she opens it and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing in there? How'd you get in there?" And I was just like, you put me, what? And like there was just a couple of times where that would happen, where she would just kind of like be somewhere else and do these really weird, like haunting things. My mother and my stepdad actually ended up getting separated, and we went to stay in a house that his parents were renting out, and they allowed us to go live there. And at this point, my aunt and her daughter had moved in with us as well. And there was just a couple of times while we were there, again, having this eerie basement. And now thinking back, that basement also randomly opened all the time by itself. And we had a dog named Chi-Chi that would constantly just look at the door of the basement and growl. And we could never figure out why she would literally just be like, her, anytime that she would like pass the basement door. And my aunt was like very into ghosts and paranormal stuff, and she would constantly take pictures over there and be like, "Look at all these orbs, there's ghosts in here, like look at the orbs in the picture." And I was kind of like, "Oh, come on, this isn't real." And I didn't take her seriously, but we had a couple of instances there as well with just weird things happening. This storm going on one night, and my mother and my aunt were having an argument. Me and my cousin were upstairs playing a video game on our computers, and they were really raising their voices, like really getting nasty with each other. And all of a sudden, all the lights went off, but only in the rooms where anyone was. So like my bedroom, where me and my cousin were, and the living room where my mother and my aunt were, and then the bedroom that my brother and sister were in, all went off. But the kitchen light was still on, the basement light was still on, the dining room light was still on. And we were like, how? Because they were all on the same circuit, so it was just like, this isn't possible. How is this happening right now? So I wasn't really paying attention to that aspect because I was upset because my video game just shut off. So me and my cousin run down the stairs and we're like, "What the heck are you guys doing? Like, you just messed up our video game." And, we're freaking out, and all of a sudden, all the lights go out. And we're like, okay, it's probably the storm. So me and my cousin decide to wait it out with my mother and my aunt. Finally, the lights come back on. So we start walking up the stairs to go back up into the bedroom. And I'm not even kidding when I say I took one step into that room, all the lights in the room went off again. So I'm screaming because I'm easily scared. My cousin's laughing at me, but I'm screaming, and my stereo turns on. Nothing else in the room, but my stereo turns on, and it starts blasting. Like, I can only remember it being like death metal. It was just like really loud, like ah kind of sound. So I run over and unplug the stereo, and for a good 10 seconds after that, it was still making that sound before it finally turned off. And to this day, like, I keep thinking back, like, how did it do that? Because it wasn't plugged in, and it was still lit up and screaming at me. Honestly, like, I can't help but think that it was some type of malicious ghost, or maybe even, something even more evil than that, just because whatever it was, it wanted to see us scared. And it did it a lot. And to the point where, by the end of my mother's life, like she was on the brink of insanity, and like I'm not even saying that to be a joke. Like she would tell me about things that she would see and hear. You know, I'm 26 now, so I haven't lived with her in quite a few years, but I didn't really take her seriously because I was like, you know, there's no way this stuff is happening. And she'd be like, I hear voices, like I've seen my mother, like, you know, just crazy stuff. And she was never like that prior to living in that first house.
Hey, see you in the next story.